This is
Call Me in a Fund.
My name is Gui Mohallem. I'm a visual artist, and I also co-lead VoteLGBT, an organization in Brazil that's been around for 10 years, working to paving the way for our leaders to occupy their rightful place in institutional politics. 10 years ago, I was kind of like a hip artist. Like I was like in fashion, like I was doing work on queer communities in the state, and also like my Arab roots, like my Lebanese roots in my family. But then when I was also working in an activist magazine called Revista Genie, and we had it was a volunteer-run project, very intersectional, before the word existed for us. But when two women from this magazine made a report on LGBT political participation, when we found out that our leaders were sabotaged and undermined inside the parties just as much as women were, we said, well, we got to do something about this. So people from that collective that ran the magazine started with the project that was just a campaign. VoteLGBT was not meant to be an organization when it started. It was meant to be a campaign. So we designed a website. But the thing is, what influenced me to do activism was the idea that we could do something about it. You know, like we had the magazine, so we had the tools to make a website, to showcase, you know, politicians. At the time, we could count in one hand the number of out LGBT politicians. And the amazing thing is that 10 years since then, like 10 years from then, we have more than 3,000 proudly queer people, leaders, running for office in the last elections. This is pretty amazing. In 2016, we did two things that were very important and groundbreaking in our story. We did our first survey during the Pride Parade. And with the results of that survey, with over 100 people interviewed, we got so much press. And we got so much interesting insights. Like we learned that São Paulo Parade, which is the biggest parade in the world, 80% go there for political reasons, to fight for justice, to fight for their rights in their own terms. And that happens not only in São Paulo, but in every single parade that we interviewed people, is 80%. So even if we're talking about the classic term of political, we believe that just being out on the streets and expressing yourself is political, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people who say, like, I'm here to defend my rights. And this is something that surprised us, because there was a narrative that São Paulo Parade became very festive and very, I don't know, it is a party, but it's a political party. But we also learned that the majority were Christians, and they were trying to divide us between Christian versus queer people. And no, we're also in Brazil, so we're less Christian than the rest of the population, but we're still in a Christian country, so we're still Christian, so there's no divide in this. But I'll keep going. So since then, we've been doing systematically, we've been generating data about our population and our communities, not only in São Paulo, but all over Brazil. We've interviewed in person around 30,000 people so far. We've met, for instance, like food insecurity is a lot higher among our communities all around Brazil. We mapped, we did a huge report during the pandemic with over 17,000 queer respondents all over Brazil in an online form, 2 different online forms, and generated like a huge report about that too. So we understood that generating data actually put us on the map. We could actually like start conversations in society if we had like strong numbers to show what's going on. So and still is, like we still don't have official data on LGBT populations in Brazil, despite having like a left-wing government. So we're still struggling for that. But as much as data we generate, we understood that this is like a powerful spark for conversations and for change. But what also happened in 2016 is that we understood that we had a common enemy, right? So it was not, and we could find allies in women and in black communities as well. So we started Mi Representa, which is like a coalition among feminist groups and queer groups, and we made like a website which was like a matchmaking website among politicians that fight for human rights and voters who are interested in human rights. At the time, we were not talking about queer candidates because nobody came out as queer. It wasn't an asset. It was like most people would hide. But what we found out in 2016, which was very interesting and telling, was that as I told you, I'm an artist and I also did film school. So one of my contributions to the project was actually making videos like the one you're doing to talk about the demands we were talking about. But when we filmed black women, people on the left who said they were concerned with racism and they were pro-human rights would just not click on black women speaking, which drove us crazy. But we also understood this is something we need to do something about. So on the next Mi Representa, we managed to connect and join the coalition with some strong black feminist groups to do it differently. And for the first time in 2018, we managed to do like it's the same matchmaking kind of platform, but this time you could select and you could choose to see only women. So we had filters, just like in Amazon, right? So we could filter by gender, by race, and by LGBT identity. But it was an affirmative filter. You could not filter by men. You can only filter women. So you either see everybody or only women. Everybody or only queer people. Everybody or only black or indigenous people. So by that way, and we still do this, so we are not partisan, but we are biased. We are pro-human rights. We are pro-representation of the people who are not in politics right now. Because we believe that the answer for the political crisis that's happening right now, that makes so many people throw out their votes to clowns that are destroying democracy, could actually be other people actually playing that role in politics, right? Which is not, like queer women or black women or queer people in general. So anyway, coming back. So 2018, we also did Mi Representa in this group. And in these platforms, we gather millions of voters and we get like millions of votes to these candidates. And we did help increase, well, we could never know that for sure, right? But we believe there's high evidence that this helped increase the participation of women and queer people in politics. But by 2020, when we started mapping who was out candidates, it was during the pandemic, and there was like a crisis in the group because of lack of financing and everything that was going on. We actually did like a last-minute website with the queer candidates that we could find, and to our surprise, like 6 years after our first time we did VoteLGBT, we actually had like 500 out LGBT candidates. And I'm like, what? Now we can do a website of our own. We can actually have like a platform that's also based on identity, right? So we'd also like direct people to not vote only on LGBT issues, but on LGBT leaders. And since then, we've been seeing an increase of every election cycle. The amount of elected officials has been doubling every election cycle. So we got about a 97 in 2020, and the same election cycle that was 2024, there were 225 queer people elected. So it's more than double the last year. The same thing happened in 2022, which we saw raise the number of like state and congressional representatives raise from 9 to 18. But the great thing that happened, because we learned so much with the groups we allied with doing Me Representa, because we are ingrained with intersectionality since the beginning, is that somehow, and I can't tell you exactly how because we're still learning what we did right, somehow we helped educate an electorate that's overall intersectional. So when we look at the 2022 numbers, queer candidates got over 3.5 million votes. But 8 out of 10 votes were to women. And 7 out of 10 votes were to a black candidates. And an extraordinary 1 every 3 votes, like a third, 1.2 million votes, went directly to trans women. So now, no country in the world has more trans congresswomen than Brazil. But the record stands at only 2. So there's a lot going on, but there's a long way forward. When we went to Mexico a couple of years ago to a political encounter, like a gathering of political leadership, that was hosted by YAH Mexico, a very close organization that we really adore and admire. They're partners. We are sisters. We say we're sister organizations. When we were there with a delegation of 24 Brazilian leaders that included 23 elected people, elected representatives, plus Simi that you just interviewed, our secretary, that we're very proud of. These people, which were mostly women, 21 of the 24 were women, and 16 of them were black and 9 of them were trans. And they were selected by their electoral performance. So this is the elite of our leadership. When they gather together in a lunch during the conference, they start talking, they founded with us this like proto institution that's still we're still trying to take off with this, but it's like a Brazilian LGBT caucus. And in their letter that I can send you if you want, the main issue was political violence. Political violence is the main obstacle that we see right now towards queer representation in Brazil. And it happens in many shape or forms. So one of them that is very critical is, I don't know if you know this, but elections in Brazil are publicly funded with lots of money, right? But this funding goes to the parties, and they are decided by the leaders of the parties with very little transparency and very little accountability. So by law, they're obliged not only to have 30% of women, but having 30% of the funding going to women. But what they do usually is that they fund like a vice president women with lots of money, but they keep starving like women candidates from accessing that funding. So one of the main issues is that no funding comes from the parties to queer candidates. Just to give you an example, a third of the elected officials, of the people who were elected, not people who ran, people who were elected, 1/3 didn't get any funding from the parties. So they were elected despite the party's sabotage. So this is one part of the we believe this is political violence, and usually they don't say this on record. So when we interview them, they don't say about this. But when they are like going through psychological support, which is something that we have been offering for 3 election cycles, that's one of the main things that stresses them psychologically, because some of these people, they don't have enough to eat during the campaign. We do surveys about their level of income, and like some of the candidates, they don't earn like they earn like around $70 a month, which is not even like minimum wage in Brazil. It's like a fourth of the minimum wage. Some of the people, it's incredible how much out of the economic systems we, like usually women already are, queer women already are, and if you're black and if you're trans, it just keeps adding you to the outskirts of the economic system. So coming back to it, so one of the issues is underfunding, which we call political sabotage by their own parties, including left-wing parties, right? Including left-wing parties. So the second thing, which is very visible, is actually gender-based political violence, like hate speech, correctional rape threats. There's nothing to be corrected, but most of these leaders, they get rape threats on their email in quite regularly. And sometimes during like lesbian pride month, all the lesbians would get, and during like bisexual pride month, all the bisexuals would get rape threats, death threats. Sometimes their addresses are exposed in like neo-Nazi groups. So like it's very pervasive. It's very pervasive. So one of the strategies that we started, which is actually now Commander joined the funding and will help us like not only keep doing for the next election cycle, but also expand it to Mexico and Argentina in the following years, is the development of an AI tool that's designed to identify these attacks online and help quantify. So the thing is, we circle back, we're going to generate data. So by generating data, it's not going to be more about anecdotes, things that somebody told me, things that we hear in interviews. It's going to be like, these are the numbers that's going on right now. Aren't we going to do something about it? Because we understand that this actually helps pressure the decision-making people to do something about it. So we made a proof of concept with Congresswoman Duda Salaberti. She was elected with over 200,000 votes in 2022 for Congress. And in 2024, she was one of the first of our leaders to run for a major office, for mayor in Belo Horizonte, which is one of the major cities in Brazil. And by doing so, she was very exposed. And we created this tool that we were able to train this tool to, with a very high level of confidence, to classify the comments that it was reading into transphobic or non-transphobic. And it was very interesting because something that even surprised us. We could do something that, because she's married to a woman, she has kids, and she did a late transition. So like there are videos online before her transition where she was wearing something like a football team, or she was wearing like whatever she was wearing then. So people would call her husband, or would call her the name of the team supporter in the masculine. Our AI was able to identify this as transphobic comment by the context. So like calling somebody a husband anywhere on the internet couldn't be called a violence. But when you talk to her, when you disqualify her family, this is transphobic political violence. This is gender-based political violence. So we were able to identify with just one candidate, almost 3.5 thousand hateful comments to one candidate. Right? So imagine the effect of that. If we normalize hate speech online, which is something that the big techs are doing right now, allowing it to be normalized, we also normalize physical violence. So these people, they have blood in their hands. In one hand, we're offering psychological support. So for free, very confidential, like we don't know the names of the people who asked for the support, for instance. Like only the clinic that we hire, they know, and we have ways for us not knowing their names, even though they can give us reports using pseudonyms and we found out that 20% of the people who were helped have gone through some kind of suicidal ideation. So Okay, we're getting people there, but what's happening over there is absolutely awful for them. But at the same time, okay, let's talk about opportunities. Let's end it on a high note. At the same time, what we see when they are in power, though, despite all these attacks and all the emotional toll and all the psychological toll, not only psychological, because some of these leaders, they had to move houses. They had to change the house where they grew up in because their family was threatened. So they lost their territory. You know, a politician without a territory is not a politician. It's something based on representation and territory. If you remove the politician of their territory, which is the strategy of the human rights protection that we have in Brazil, you kill the politician. Like how can the person run, right? Despite the awful prices that these leaders had to make in order to be there for us, for all of us, the work that they're doing is amazing. It's not that they passed legislation towards LGBT because they didn't, because it's impossible right now due to the political climate. But they are taking up the issues that the left has abandoned, the working issues, the homeless issues, the climate issues, the education issues. So they have been, like, they are leading the conversation about the work week load in Brazil. And the person who's doing that is a black trans woman. And trans women in Brazil, and I bet in many other countries, they're excluded from the traditional or the institutionalized workforce. Most of them are sex workers because they have no place in the work. So when she's fighting for the reduction of the work week, she's not fighting for trans people, she's fighting for everyone. And what they're doing is that because of the technology that they developed, not only the elected ones, Siemens does the same thing, by all the techniques that they learned for surviving a hostile world that was never welcomed them, they are bringing that technologies to politics. And they are doing that for everyone, not just for us. So I truly think that we all should be thankful that they are offering their bodies and their lives for this task. And we should be supporting them because they're doing that precariously, without team, without support, with everything that's going on. And we need to support them, and we need to support them more, because if they quit, I don't know what's going to happen. Because the extreme right, don't take me wrong, we have been rising in Brazil. It's not that the extreme right is not gaining ground over there. It is, just like in the rest of the world. It's just that different from the rest of the world, where when they grow, we shrink. In Brazil, we're also growing. So that's the trick. So the threat's still there, the violence still there, and there are a lot more. Like even before all the cuts from the American government, like the three biggest organizations that dedicate their work against queer people, against LGBT people, they got more funding than all of the 7,000 LGBT organizations in the world together combined. Imagine now. So we need support. We need our team, the team is under stress. We are all under attack and we have a huge task, but we have not enough resources to do the work and to support the people that is actually working right now to do this. You know what I mean? So when we started VoteLGBT, it started as a campaign. So by 2016, we were convinced that our goal was long-term, that we needed to do something like every year. So we started doing things every 2 years as a collective still. Nobody would earn anything, and people who would be in the collective had to have some kind of privilege to do that because we were not getting any money. We got institutionalized in 2020, and we got our first biggest big grant a year and a half ago. So we have been doing but even before that, we managed to get, even as a collective, we managed to get the social name in the voter's ID. We managed to get the electoral system to actually collect official data on LGBT candidates. That's why we know now there's 3,000 candidates, out LGBT candidates, and most of them are women. And from these women, most of them are black, and a third of them are trans. So we have this data, not only the ones that we produce, but the ones that we make the state to produce. We have been doing huge work for this year with no funding. And we got funding a year and a half. But I believe as we got into this professional organization thing, we now we have our board members, and internal policies and governance and everything. It's a little, it's not first, I think it seems a little, we have to prove so much before we get funding. To get a core funding, we never got core funding. The parades that we interview in São Paulo for over 8 years, we funded ourselves. We pay people, but we funded ourselves because it was never, ever, ever funded, this data production. It's a strategic work. It's very important to our work. We need to keep the history of this, but it's very hard for people to trust that the work that we do and the people that's doing the work here, they actually need to eat and to order food when they come home really tired. It's not only about surviving, it's about having quality of life, having a good life. And we're very far from here. If today I quit, that we would not be able to pay somebody to do my work. It's so underneath other organizations' pay. So, yeah, I think what the philanthropists could do is finding, I know they are very much risk averse, and I understand everything, but I think at this time more than ever, we should see an increase of core funding, We should be able, by the results that we've been having for the past years, we should be able to be trusted, that we are doing enough and good with the money we get. The idea of measuring the diversity in an organization by diverse people, I'm air quoting here, diverse people in position of power, is that if you put a queer black woman in a position of power, that would mean that the organization is not racist or not LGBT-phobic or not misogynist, which we know is not true. And sometimes these people, these diverse people, are put there without the support, without the preparation, and in 2 years they're burned out and they leave. And the organization remains more racist than before, right? But still with a good image, because they could pay another person because this person, when he gets, being in a position of leadership, is very vulnerable. You are very exposed. I have a lot of privilege, and it's hard enough. It's a really hard job to do, to be in this position right now. But what we developed in VoteLGBT was a system where we have an add-on to the wages. So every week, every month, the team would answer a questionnaire regarding their vulnerabilities that tracks their identity, but also their class, saying did you study in a private school? Do you expect inheritance? Do you own your house? And by every question, there's an addition to their wages, a monetary addition. So in that sense, for the same amount of work and the same position, a woman will get more money than a man in Vote anytime. Or a black person will get more than a white person, a trans person will get more than a cis person, and so on and so on. But what that tool gives us as well, not only a sense of fair, it doesn't change much, but sometimes it adds up to $200 in a wage. Sometimes it's 50% of the person's wage because we don't pay well, right? Remember that? So, but what also gives us, which I think is amazing, we have data. We have a way of, because we do that with our suppliers as well. So we know where our money goes to. So in Vote, over 90% of the money that goes through Vote, the resources that go through Vote, goes to a queer person. And more than 80% goes to women, specifically. More than 30% goes to a black person, and around 20% goes to a trans person. Or so we have numbers about people with disabilities and non-binary people. But it also shows our challenges. We don't hire anybody from indigenous background. Or the representation in money for trans men is not good enough yet. So we know where the challenges are because we believe that money, it's about possibility. It's about the possibility to eat and to order food when you come home tired. So it's about power, it's about agency. So we need to make sure that these people are earning well for the excellent work that they do. Because queer people, in many contexts, just like women or like black people, we don't have the privilege of mediocrity. If we're not excellent, there's no space for us. So what you're seeing here in politics and in queer organizations who are under attack right now is queer excellent, because we have been doing amazing work despite being severely under-resourced, because there's implication as well. We are fighting for our people. We are fighting for our communities. And sincerely, as an artist, I believe queer people, we are a nation. We don't have a country, but we are a people. We have culture, we have language, we develop technologies that are specific to us and that we offer to the world, that often excludes us. We are in a turning point right now, right? So what's going on in the States, not only with the election of the far right, but also the capitulation of the big technocrats towards this system. We know diversity is the enemy of the scalability, right? Because they need, so the more variations, the more difficult it is to escalate. You don't need like one solution, you need like a different solution to every single, individual there is. So they are very much against diversity because it's against their business model. But we are in this turning point. And I sincerely believe that we can and we have to we can be the subjects and the architects of political and technological transformation. An organization small as ours, underfunded as ours, right, could make an AI tool capable of identifying context-based transphobic violence. What could an organization big enough with his resources do? What did a company do? If we could do it in such an short of time, with so little resources, what could we do if we actually had resources to do? We have the people, we have the knowledge, we know what we want, but we need to be in the center of the designing of the technology. We can't be the objects of it. You know what I mean? And we have the people. Like we can do this, and we know, like, not only we, the big we that includes Simi, that includes Duda Salabete, that includes Diana Santos, Erica Hilton, that includes VoteLGBT and Comenet. We could be driving where technology goes. We must politicize what is discussed as technical, because these are not technical, these are political decisions. So just by saying this algorithms are too difficult, are too hard, are too complicated for you to understand, that's why you can't mess with this. No, you can. We've done it. right? We, 15 people, we've done it. So, if we organize, and the future, I think the future of democracy in Brazil will depend on the alliance of different sectors. So we need the government to enforce, not only propose, but enforce regulation towards the digital platforms, the big tech, which we know is hard. They have lots of money, they have lobbying things, but we need the government to do that. But they need to listen to the people who know. Civil society, specialized civil society, who know the issues and can't be fooled by these like empty discourses that they often give us. But we also need to reimagine the way we make alliances. I don't know if the way we've been doing our alliances in the queer world or in the left, I don't know. Maybe this crisis is an opportunity for us to reimagine the way we woven our alliances. So instead of like sewing like this, like in a fabric like this, maybe we need to do like this, you know? Like our congresswoman like fighting for the work week, right? So Alci Paulino, who's an amazing person and the leader of research in VoteLGBT, she has a saying that says, Alciana Paulino, que é a coordenadora de pesquisa do VoteLGBT, uma mulher maravilhosa. Ela tem uma fala que eu gosto muito. Existe uma expressão em português que diz, isso é trabalho de formiguinha, which is a little ant's job. A formiguinha, ela carrega um peso muito maior que o dela e ela vai fazendo de pouquinho em pouquinho. Mas a fala dela é, isso não é um trabalho de formiguinha, é um trabalho de formigueiro. What she's saying is that we are the ant house. We have, like, queer people are everywhere. Like, we are not only in politics, we are in the health system, we are building companies, we are in hospitals, in navies, in education, we are everywhere. So if we manage to use this excellence that we had to build to be in those places, and manage to woven an alliances that intertwines the fight for climate justice, for housing, for fair wages, with the technology that we have developed by surviving a world that has been expelling us since the beginning of the ages, maybe we can start something new and something that's better for everyone. We've lost the conversation about queer rights, right? We've lost this conversation because they're framing it as privileges. So there was also, at one point, there was also this narrative about queer liberation. Like, we are in the streets, we are half naked, we are, so it's hard, it's a tough point to sell. But what I think it's very compelling is that we don't, no matter where you look, we don't have full citizenship. We don't have access to full citizenship. So what we're fighting for is for the access of full citizenship. Not only for queer people, but for everyone. So democracy, for us, is a system where everybody has the right to full citizenship. Not only the chosen few, not only the rich, not only the cis people, whatever.
This is Call Me in a Fund.